Hello, welcome to the Tangent Podcast with Emily and Aleksa. I'm Aleksa, and today I'm joined by Emily, and we are super excited to have you with us again. Today, we are going to do our best to answer a question we often find ourselves asking. Did school accidentally make students hate math? We want to approach this question by sharing our own personal experience with maths, the presentation of maths anxiety, and some solutions that we've thought of along the way. We briefly looked at the poor response to maths last episode. Emily, would you like to recap?
Thank you, Aleksa. I will. As Aleksa and I discussed in the previous episode, we feel so many people view maths and their own mathematical ability in quite a negative light. We also wanted to be clear that this is not a criticism of the incredible teachers who pour so much passion into their classrooms every day. Rather, we think it reflects a much broader cultural conversation about perfectionism, performance anxiety, comparison, and the fear of getting things wrong. Mathematics has such a unique place in our world. People are often really comfortable to say, I'm really bad at maths, or I hated maths, which we don't for other subjects, while the people who excel at maths are placed on a pedestal, as though they possess a magical gift that most people weren't born with. Aleksa and I feel neither of those narratives serve students very well. In this episode, Aleksa and I will explore why so many people leave school with a distaste for mathematics and what teachers, parents, schools, and students, as well as the broader society, can do to help change that. We don't have all the answers ourselves, but we do have plenty of questions and conversations we'd like to start having. And we hope that you'll enjoy exploring them with us. And before we begin, we thought it would be very important to have a conversation about why the two of us have a passion for mathematics. After all, we're going to make a job out of it. So, Aleksa, let's start with you. What made mathematics exciting enough that you decided to become a maths teacher?
Well, I think for me, my whole experience of mathematics would be an entire podcast series itself. So
agree.
I'll just try and give the highlights, I think, as most of us do. In years 8 to 10, I had a lovely teacher who just really made me love maths. And I remember that in her classroom, we would do these fun activities. We would be up out of our seats. We'd be working in groups. It wasn't that she was teaching at the front of the classroom and she'd go along. She was this amazingly lovely teacher, but she was also had her standards in the classroom. And I think that it was her attitude of just like really believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself, that was just truly amazing, that truly just ignited that passion of mathematics and going a step further to even want to be that same person in my other students' life. As sort of time goes on, I realized I wanted to be a math teacher. And in year 11 as well, I had a teacher who was really passionate about mathematical theory, and he sort of passed that passion on to me. He was a good teacher, but he really just showed me the beauty of math. I remember learning with him the quadratic formula, where it comes from, how do we get there? And his mind works differently than the teachers I've had before. And that's when I thought, wow, math is really cool. And year 12 to 13, I had a teacher who pushed me and who challenged me again in different ways. And my class was smaller. We were 4 people in my sixth form math class. And he used an inquiry-based learning method, but also got us working in pairs. And one of the things I loved is that he'd send us home with a mathematical question, not, what is the square root of this number or something like that. But he'd send us with almost an abstract question, get us to think about it a little bit differently. Well, what could be the other solution? Think about it creatively. And it just really, he built a relationship with us that just solidified my love for learning, that just solidified my desire to be a teacher who builds that relationship and who gets you to think creatively outside of the box for different solutions to math problems or just any real world problems, really. And for me, a lot of enjoyment of mathematics can be attributed to my amazing teachers that I had throughout my schooling experience. I truly think I am blessed to have had such amazing teachers. I know that is not always the case. And I just think that those are some of the reasons that just got me so passionate about maths. Emily, why don't you share why you like maths?
Thank you, Aleksa. I will. And I first want to say it's so exciting to hear how many positive experiences you've had. These are the kinds of things, these positive memories are what Aleksa and I hope to cultivate for our students too. And I can also say that I feel really privileged to reflect on my education, where I also had maths teachers who genuinely loved teaching and were deeply passionate about their subjects and who really cared about us and helping us grow and us persevere as people too. And I think what's really noticeable about good teachers is that we absorb their passion, their enthusiasm, this energy, and it's so contagious. And if you'd asked me while I was in primary school or in high school what my favorite subject was, I don't know if I would have said mathematics. However, what did encourage me to enjoy my maths classes was to have other people around me who really, really liked maths, who viewed it as really important and really worth persevering in. And this now draws into our bigger conversation of how the narrative around maths is shaped by the context that you're in and the people around you. So for me, having peers who loved it meant that I could find love in it too. And I feel really, really lucky to be able to say that as well. Because when the narrative is positive, it's so much easier to develop positive feelings about it yourself. And in the same manner, if that narrative is that maths is boring or impossible or only for the clever people, that attitude can spread just as quickly. And reflecting on this highlights to me that it's not all about me as a teacher. It's not all about what I can give to my students. It's about the kind of classroom culture I can cultivate. So teachers, they matter, but they don't always carry the sole responsibility of being able to create this passion for learning. Students have to input a little bit into that too, because classrooms are these communities, and the attitudes that everybody brings into this space influences what learning is going to look like too. And as future maths teachers, our job, like I said, we have to build those classrooms. We have to support students in being a part of creating these amazing, amazing spaces where curiosity and effort is always respected and celebrated. Is that something you see yourself as well, Aleksa?
Yeah, for sure. And I love that idea. I think it's taking an idea of this collaborative learning that I know I feel so passionate about, that as teachers, we should be equipping students with their own learning communities, that it's not just, you have to listen to what I say and you do the work, but it's actually, how can we get you working together? How can we ignite, like you said, that passion for mathematics with one another, so that you're not, there's one teacher in a class of 25 students. That one teacher can't be the support for all of the students. And I think that there's something so beautiful when I see my students working together as a collective, as groups, when they go to each other first for the answers, or for, they're like, I'm struggling with this. How do you do this? And utilizing each other as that. And 100%, I think even as teachers, we should be presenting mathematics as a collaborative learning opportunity. It's not, you're not running in your own lane, but, we're working alongside other people. And that opportunity is available to everyone. And I think that this is another sort of general idea in how we present mathematics. It also adds on to the idea that school has accidentally made students hate math, because I think that oftentimes when people think about learning math, they think it's just revising. They picture, a teacher standing at the front of the classroom talking at you for 45 minutes, and you're scrambling to make notes and try and keep up. And then you get home and you've just spent the whole 60 minutes trying to focus. And then you have 50 questions to do. And if you didn't understand it, well, you're not going to get those 50 questions done, and the homework's due tomorrow. And it's just this almost, anxiety inducing experience. But I think anyone would be bored if they had to sit and listen to someone teach for a whole period, no matter what the topic was. And it's especially disheartening when you combine this teaching style with the stigma that math is hard and math is boring.
I completely agree, Alex, and I think you said it really nicely. I think one of the most tragic misconceptions about maths is that it's completely reliant on memorization rather than the system that we discussed in episode 1 to be understood. And I remember my maths classes were always the best when we were busy deconstructing formulas, when we were walking around, standing at the board, speaking to one another, engaging in mathematics talk. I think that perhaps because of the way in which maths is presented in primary school as something with just one solution, with one way of achieving it, by the time students reach us in middle school, they've already got an idea of what maths should be. And as teachers, it's our job to deconstruct that a little bit too. The arithmetic is very, very important. So while we might have learned rigor in our youth and accuracy, which is a very, very important foundation for higher levels of mathematics, it's important that we as teachers transition our students well into the new types of thinking and ways in which to engage with mathematics. So we are approaching the halfway point of our episode, Aleksa. So it is time for our brain break again. As we've explained, in every episode, we are going to have a little moment where we do something fun, interesting, exciting. And today we are going to rank the basic operations. So this is going to be a little bit of a tangent, and we're going to our personal tastes. You may disagree with us, and if you do, please let us know. You can either comment on this episode of the podcast, or you are welcome to send us an email at tangentpodcastadmin@gmail.com, and you can share your ranking with us. We are going to be ranking the 4 basic operations: adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So Aleksa, why don't you share your little controversial opinions with us?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't think that it was going to be that hard until I sat down and I had to actually rank the systems, or rank the operations. I just realized that I think certain operations work differently in different people's brains. And so the way I've ranked this on a way that makes sense to me. And I think that whenever I think about the 4 basic operations, I am just naturally averse to subtraction. There's just something in my brain that goes blank. And I think for that reason, I have to place subtraction at the bottom of my list, purely based on I won't seek out, subtraction questions. If I have to do subtraction, I'll think about it in a different way if I can. And in third place, and this, I'm not sure how Emily will take this, I have placed division. Now, this is for a similar reason. Recently, I watched a video on how to divide any number, and it's made me realize that I don't always have to be completely accurate. So if you tell me, to do 12 divided by 7, I actually might find some enjoyment in that because I'm just giving you, a non-integer answer as best to my abilities. So division is third, but there's some cases where it won't be that bad. But in general, it's not an operation that I look forward to completing, Okay, in second place, I put the operation that I do enjoy, but I struggle to complete, and it takes me a while. And for me, that operation would be multiplication. So in school, I never learned the column method. And this is always what I tell my students, is that if I have to do a multiplication question, I have to, we always called it the grid method, where you draw a grid and you break up the number. So 362 would be 360 and 2, and you're multiplying it by 25 would be 20 and 5. And I do all of those and I add them together, which is the same basic, but I can't do it in the column method. I have to see it laid out like that. So multiplication, I enjoy, but it takes me a while because I have to do that method. And it's just, there's something about breaking down the complex problems into bite-sized pieces, of breaking it down into the different parts that I really enjoy and I feel accomplished. So for me, that leaves addition as first place. And I'm not surprised by this ranking. I always will gravitate towards addition. I think of subtraction as addition of a negative number. I think of multiplication as repeated addition. It's the basis for all of my mathematical, problem solving skills. So, and of course, two are better than one. If you think about it, addition, I think that would be my final ranking. But this was Emily's idea. So I'm very interested to hear how you would rank them, Emily.
Well, thank you, Aleksa. I think you articulated it really nicely and you gave nice, thorough reasons. You did say this was my idea, and I must tell you, to our listeners, this came to me as a shower thought. Is it a good shower thought? Not so sure. Maybe I should improve my shower thoughts. The reason why was because I remember thinking to myself, oh my word, subtraction has to be my least favorite one. So if subtraction is your favorite basic order of operation, Aleksa and I apologize for having it ranked last, and we'd love to hear your reasons as to why it might be your first pick. It just also made a little bit less sense in my brain, but it almost feels like a natural aversion, in the same way I can't handle the smell of seafood. But maybe that's the controversial opinion, Aleksa. I think that might be the controversial one. But I think it's also that I see the other three operations feature more naturally in my own life. And I adore multiplicative operations. When I say multiplicative operations, I mean multiplying and dividing. So I've placed addition third. Now for my top two, I found this really difficult to pick. So obviously I had subtraction that I didn't like, but what do I love? Okay, it was really difficult to decide. Multiplication provides the grandeur of growth. It's really exciting, but division embodies the act of sharing. So therefore, I'm going to have to place division first. That's the kind of person I want to be. I think it can be complicated, and I think it's nice when it's not perfect. So division it shall be. And now as we move into the next part of our episode, we wanted to discuss mathematics and the social ideas of perfection, because we think this features in a lot of people's experiences and how they perceive mathematics or how they engage with it. So Aleksa, would you like to start us off?
I'd love to. This topic of perfection and even some aspects of math anxiety is actually a topic that Emily and I have researched for some of our university classes. And the results have been quite interesting. I think it's really opened my eyes. And there's just a general idea and understanding of, school anxiety and test anxiety that I think a lot of people are aware of. But there's also a more nuanced category where students actually feel anxiety even just in the mathematics classroom, just learning mathematics. But the numbers were really eye-opening, especially as a future math teacher. Not only do some students not enjoy math, but some students experience elevated levels of stress during lessons caused by learning math. And this is a huge problem that us as math educators need to take seriously. I remember the first time I got a 0 on a math test. When I stared at that 0 on my paper, it felt like the walls were closing in on me. It felt like I had failed myself. It felt like I'd failed my teacher. I felt just this immense pressure and disappointment that I couldn't even get a single mark on this test. And I immediately made up some little sorry excuse and ran to the bathroom and cried until the class ended. I couldn't even get out of the class to go grab my bags. And eventually I meandered back into the classroom with this weight that the grade was a reflection of my math ability. And I just remember sitting in front of my teacher, and she sat me down and she spoke to me, and she handled the situation amazingly and talked me out of my spiraling thoughts that this grade was related to my worth, and allowed me to walk into my next math class without feeling anxious. She stopped that. But others haven't had a teacher to step in and disprove that negative self-talk. And the spiral worsens and worsens until the act of doing math feels directly tied to your worth. Not even the act of testing, but just the act of doing math. And I think that slowly students stop trying. They give up at any breath of difficulty. They stop learning because they're just so anxious that they just don't want to try, because if they don't try, they don't have the opportunity to fail, which is so sad to hear as a teacher, because failure is how we learn.
Thank you so much for sharing what is important, deep, and very personal, Aleksa. And I'm glad that you really had somebody who was there to be able to support you through this. And your grades definitely don't indicate your worth. I don't even know what grades you get at university, but I do know that you're kind. I do know that you're a great friend. And I think that is what is important when we have conversations about academic performance, that people are people. People are not grades at all. And that was something that I also needed to learn in high school. My greatest struggle was perfectionism, where I had also convinced that my worth was tied to a grade that I'd receive in school. And it meant redoing assignments over and over and over again until they were perfect, or redoing art projects. And it was completely debilitating at the time. And while they were not always related to mathematics, I think this idea of perfectionism really was something I struggled with generally as a teenager. Many students, it is very related to maths. And this is a common experience. We don't want people to feel that because they are struggling in the maths classroom or in any other classroom or with something new that they're learning or a new challenge that they're taking on, that they're worth anything less as individuals. And as students, teachers, parents, we need to ensure that we keep having conversations about these tough moments, what Alexis shared with us now, or the way that I may have felt in high school, so that we realize how common these experiences are. So mathematics related anxieties appear to be becoming more common. International data from the OECD's Program for International Student Assessment, the PISA, suggests that anxiety related to maths has increased about 8% on average in the past decade. And some countries are reporting 62% of students are anxious in maths class, or 45% of students in Poland. And then we've only seen very few countries where we've seen slight reductions in mathematics anxiety, such as Singapore, South Korea, Thailand. And I think we could have meaningful conversations about why that is. And it could be in relation to some kind of foundational mathematics teaching, or in the way in which cultures have changed over time. Maths anxiety and maths achievement often reinforce one another. So when you're really anxious, the stress may make you perform worse on an assessment. But the great thing is it works the other way too. When you're able to understand content, or understand what you're learning in class, or make the meaningful connections, your confidence will grow and your anxiety decreases. So as I've touched on, there are wider influences than just instructional or what a student gains from their teacher or the people in their classroom. It's social, cultural, the way in which a society places importance on mathematics or not. In the same way that we've seen an increase in maths anxiety, we've also seen a decline in the mental health of young people as well. So if we compare the figures from 2009, about 26% of students in the US reported this hopeless sadness. Studies were done again in 2021, it was 42%. And these broader anxieties find their way into mathematics classrooms as well, whether that's a general hopelessness about the future of the world, or whether that be related to COVID or social media or what that may be. But we don't want to be having a conversation about how the world sucks. We want to also be part of a solution. We're not here to just complain. So, Aleksa, would you like to share some ways in which we can support students in the classroom to learn to love maths?
100%. I think that teachers should be creating an environment of inquiry, basically meaning where questions and mistakes are welcome, that students are working together, they're working to find solutions to problems, they're asking the questions without the worry of getting it wrong. You know, it's not a teacher trying to catch you out if you don't know or you weren't listening, but it's actually a teacher who's interested to hear your thoughts. I also think learning should be emphasized. This is something I've seen be done really well at a lot of my teaching practice schools. Is tests are given back and not immediately put into a folder, but they actually use it as an opportunity to teach students to learn from one another. So they sit with the students around them and they spend time going through the questions with one another, learning from the questions that one person might have got right and one person might have got wrong, and swapping whenever, just there's just so much variety in a classroom that you can do that just emphasizes learning. And my last sort of solution that I hold really strongly is that perseverance is better than perfection. If at first you don't succeed, try again. That's a quote that a lot of us would know. And I don't want students who get 100% on every test. I want students who will get a 50, a 60 on a test and seek to learn what they got wrong. That to me is more important than top grades. If you are instilling within your students that perseverance, that their attitude towards learning is better than their grades, I think that goes a long way for the maths anxiety.
I completely agree. The struggling is the evidence of learning, and the mistakes are the proof that learning is happening. And sometimes if you're getting things right, then maybe you need another little challenge. And we're also looking for more of a balanced approach in maths education where we have fact and procedural fluency as well as this problem solving, because they support one another in classrooms as well. And as teachers, I think we should also be looking deeper beyond just the saying of, I'm bad at maths. I think it says something about a person. And as teachers, it could be our job to think about what that could mean. Maybe it means I'm scared of getting this wrong. I'm scared of being perceived as not intelligent. And if we can dig into the root cause of why people feel a certain way in their maths classrooms, I think we'll be able to make a lot of headway in supporting them in learning to love maths in the way that we do. So, as you've just heard, Aleksa and I have proposed some ideas on how we can improve this perception of mathematics. As you all know, we are the new PR team for maths. And in the next episode, we are going to explore how teachers, parents, curriculum developers, and stakeholders can be a part of supporting students in building this love for mathematics.
We are looking forward to having you join us as we continue this conversation, and we will see you in the next episode, where you can already listen to right now.
Bye!